Hello and welcome to the show that has no name because this is not a Q&A video. I am your host, pannobhasa, and I suppose this could be like episode 2 of Dharmic Aquarium studies, but really there's not a whole lot of Dharma to discuss in this particular episode, so it might be more accurate to call it biological aquarium studies, ecological aquarium studies, or we could just keep it with no name whatsoever. But what we're going to talk about today, or what I'm going to talk about anyhow, is my aquarium. I was promised an aquarium update some weeks ago, and I actually recorded one like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I just wasn't satisfied with it. Maybe it was too early in the morning or something. I wasn't completely awake, and I don't know, it just didn't come over very well. And I wasn't satisfied with the quality of the production, and so it has remained in the can, so to speak. But there have been some significant developments since then in my aquarium, in 2 aquariums, and also in the 2 aquariums that my sweetheart, my lovely bride, has also acquired. And that's kind of a funny story in that when I first got an aquarium for my birthday back in July, she was trying to talk me out of it because she thought it probably wasn't a good idea. We don't have a good place to put it. It might be too expensive or some such. And then within a week or two, she fell in love with my aquarium and she started wanting to get an aquarium too. And then I got a second aquarium that's mainly going to be, it's just a small 10-gallon tank that I'm using for culturing invertebrates at present, but in future it may become a breeding tank for gourami fish. And then she also wanted a second tank, which is a small, like a 6-gallon tank that she's going to put a betta or a Siamese fighting fish into, that's sitting on her desk. And so from having 0 aquariums within a matter of a few months, we now have 4. One's just getting started, and I'll show that later. I'll show all 4 of them eventually at some point in this video. This one probably won't be as long as the last one, which was surprisingly long. But just sort of as a review of the last one, my goal in setting up an aquarium, unlike when I was a kid and I just wanted all kinds of weird looking fish, is I wanted to set up a kind of ecosystem, like a balanced ecosystem in an aquarium. And theoretically, I probably wouldn't have to feed my fish, especially now that Attila has passed away, he just would not learn how to forage. But the whole trials and tribulations of raising dwarf gouramis are going to be discussed in due course in this video. So I suppose what I should do now, because this is an aquarium video, is actually show you an aquarium. And you may not recall what it looked like before, but I'm going to show you what it looks like now. And take the camera, move the microphone, and then we go over this way. So this, in a rather shaky fashion at present, this is my aquarium. I believe it's a 32-gallon aquarium. And I started off with a little school of cherry barbs, which are still in there. You can still see like the bright red one there and these kind of paler red ones. The paler red ones are the females. That one looked like she's full of eggs, that fat one there. And so I'm pretty sure I still have a little school of 3 males and I think 7 females of these cherry barbs. And this bright red gourami fish, and let's see, that's Kreka. I've had her, she was in the last video. But I have 2 more dwarf gouramis. Actually, 3, because I replaced Attila and I have Attila 2. That's Attila 2 right there. Attila the second. So I guess I can discuss the difficulties I've been having with dwarf gouramis. When I was a kid, a wild type dwarf gourami, which come from like India and Southeast Asia, a wild type dwarf gourami was like the standard kind of dwarf gourami that you could get at an aquarium store, and now they're almost impossible to obtain. No aquarium store or pet store in this area sells wild-type dwarf gouramis or female dwarf gouramis. It's mainly like specialty breeds. Like this one here is a cobalt blue, and this big red guy here is a flame gourami, I think. I think he's called a flame gourami. And neither one of them is wild type. I do believe that the females are wild type. And now, of course, they are demurely hiding because they're bashful. So, but they'll come to the front, and then you'll see them also. So, in my efforts to try to get some wild type dwarf gouramis, I ordered them in the mail, or ordered them through UPS from a place called aquariumfish.com. And so I tried to get 2 female wild type dwarf gouramis, and I'm pretty sure at least one of them is wild type. And then I ordered a male wild type dwarf gourami because you can't even get males in wild type anymore. And for some reason, they sent me what appears to be a wild type female, but that big red flame guy is what they sent me as a wild type, and he's not wild type at all. Although, fortunately, he does have wild instincts, and he just made himself at home in this tank immediately and started foraging, which is what they're supposed to do because I have cultured this aquarium with microfauna. So these plants, especially this monstrous hornwort here, this big wavy plant in the front, it's just teeming with little microorganisms and just tiny crustaceans and so forth that a lot of these fish, I mean, this hornwort is feeding probably most of the food that these fish are getting, at least half of it anyway. Especially Kraka there, that kind of golden colored female wild type dwarf gourami. She spends half of her time just foraging in this hornwort, just feeding on biofilm and microfauna. With biofilm just being like that slimy layer that everything gets when you keep it in water. It's mainly bacteria, maybe some algae and fungi, protozoa, that sort of thing. And some species of fish just specialize in feeding on that. And some of the fish in here are feeding mostly on microfauna and biofilm. So anyways, I'm stuck with this huge male dwarf gourami that is nowhere near to being wild type, and I already have plenty of red fish, and so I was just planning on getting rid of him, just like swapping him for at least a cobalt blue one like Attila here, because Attila comes fairly close to wild type. He's got more blue on him than wild type, but otherwise he comes fairly close. If the light hits him in a certain way, he looks like a wild type. There's the 2 females right there. You can see one's a little more golden than the other. Let's see. So I'm just kind of stuck with him. I don't know what to do with him. When I first got him, I was just kind of disgusted because obviously he's not a wild type dwarf gourami. And my woman actually was in tears to some degree because she is a sentimental sort, and she thinks he's a very nice looking fish, and he's just made himself at home, and he's very chill and very nice and everything. And I was just disgusted and wanted to get rid of him because I had my heart set on wild type, because wild type fish are just more hardy. You know, it's like they haven't been messed with by humans. And that is a problem with aquarium fish nowadays, is that so many of them have been specialty bred or just flat out inbred, that they're just not very healthy. And there's Attila. So I'm still struggling to get like at least one male wild type dwarf gourami, but the bioload in this aquarium is already so high that I can't really continue adding more fish. That there's more fish in here than it looks like, because as I may show you a little later, there are some extra additions. Like there's a zebra loach back in the hornwort back there that you probably can't see right now. So this hornwort, I mean, it's just amazing. It's just a monstrous plant. It's when in the previous video, it was growing up to maybe about a little higher than where that crossways stick is. That's another new addition, is that stick. I picked it up in a stream nearby and just put it in there. But I mean, it has grown so big that if I hadn't been pruning it, it would just fill this entire aquarium. That hornwort would. And you can see there's some algae over on that side that I don't scrape off because it just adds to the biological diversity. There's some water wisteria back there that the fish like to hide in, but it's not as good as a source of forage as this hornwort is. Which, as I say, I've had to prune back a few times already because, I mean, I've got like a bucket full of it. It just grows like it seems like it's growing like at least half an inch a day, maybe even an inch a day. And it's just got so many fronds on it that it provides lots of hiding places and a lot of like surface area for tiny creatures to live on. And so anyone who wants a natural aquarium, they want to have like a balanced ecosystem. Hornwort is a good choice. This water wisteria also is a good choice, just as a kind of habitat it provides a good hiding place. Also, the fish do forage in the water wisteria also. And I don't know if I said it already, but I planted another water wisteria back in that corner, add a little bit of balance. And also one other plant addition is subwassertang, which, let's see here. I put some right down there. It looks kind of like a freshwater seaweed. I don't know if you can, it doesn't seem very focused, does it? There's a loach there in the background, a zebra loach, another new addition to this aquarium. And it looks like a kind of freshwater seaweed. There's a little more over on that side, right down there. And most of it has pretty much just kind of either dissolved or been eaten by snails. And it's not really a freshwater seaweed after all. I have read that it's the gametophyte generation of a kind of fern. So it looks like seaweed and it's really nice, and it's supposed to be a good habitat for microfauna, which is one of the reasons why I got it. And let's see, what else have we got in here? There's a zebra loach back there, which you can't see very easily. And I still have some otocinclus algae-eating catfish in here. Supposedly 3, although I experience a certain amount of insecurity when I can't count all of them. It's like there's so many hiding places in here that it's very rare to see all the number that you're supposed to have all at the same time. It's like I got 4 zebra loaches, which there's one in the back there. Yeah, now you can't see him. It's kind of too bad. You did get a good view of one of them anyway. I got 4 of them at the same time that I ordered supposedly the wild type male dwarf gourami, which turned into a flame gourami, and also a female, which I have. There's the male right there. All his splendor, all his artificially bred splendor. And he's huge. He's possibly the hugest dwarf gourami I've ever seen. And the snails, they're still in there. In fact, I've got more snails now. Let's see if we can. Yeah, there aren't any good views. I've got a nerite snail hiding right in there. You can sort of see him kind of up against the wood underneath the end of that dried leaf. He hasn't moved around much. He's been in there for a few weeks, and I don't think he's left this little 3-pronged piece of wood or 4-pronged piece of wood since I put him in there. He just kind of moves up and down feeding on that, and that's good enough for him. But one unfortunate thing for the snails is those zebra loaches, one of which you may have noticed with the stripes, is they specialize in eating snails. So they're going to keep the snail population down, prevent any population explosions. They seem to leave the bigger snails alone and eat the smaller ones. And this is still right here is the Anubias plant. That's still, it's still growing. It's doing fairly well. It's supposed to be a very slow growing plant. And I think it's doing better now that the hornwort is kind of put it in the shade, because this kind of plant does specialize in growing in the shade. That's why it's called Anubias, named after Anubis, the god of the underworld, because they like growing in shade. And if they get too much light, like this one had at first before the hornwort was here, it gets algae on the leaves, and that's not so good. So let's see, what else do we got in here? That's really about it. But you can see that I was waiting for it to get more jungly. There's a zebra loach back in there. There he is, kind of. You can sort of see him. And there's one article I was reading about zebra loaches before I got one, saying that they are a gregarious type of fish, and so they're happiest in a group of at least 12, but that would be really overloading the aquarium, I think. So I got a group of 4, but I'm experiencing a certain insecurity, and I can never seem to count more than 3 at a time. So one of them is reclusive and hiding back here, or else he has passed away and is returning his nutrients to the environment. And I suppose I should mention that Attila the First, because the cobalt blue dwarf gourami in there is right there. That's Attila the Second. Attila the First had the same kind of problem that the female cobalt blue dwarf gourami got. And this is one reason why I've begun preferring wild type, especially for dwarf gouramis, in that she just wasted away. She just did not have a foraging instinct. She never learned about feeding time. And so she just wasted away, wouldn't eat, and died. And then the male, who was in the previous video, he was foraging fairly well, but he still much preferred feeding time. Eating flakes. He'd prefer eating flakes than hunting out rotifers and nematodes and so forth. And he just eventually just kind of got the same lethargy or apathy or whatever as the female got, and then he died. And so he was put into the invertebrate aquarium, which I'll be showing you next, and his body lasted about 3 days before it was reclaimed by the ecosystem. And everything is pretty much similar to the way it was before. We still got the little spiky ball down there is a gum tree seed pod, which is a good place for microfauna to live. There's a zebra loach right there making an appearance, and they're from India also. So the only deviation from an Asian motif in this aquarium is the little otosynchus algae-eating catfish that come from South America, I'm pretty sure. And they're not bred in captivity, or very rarely bred in captivity. And so all these otosynchus catfish that only cost a few bucks, they're at every pet store pretty much. They're all wild caught. They have to be caught in South America and flown up here for fish geeks. And we still got the Anubias plant back there, that kind of vertical looking plant with the little leaves on it that isn't growing nearly as well as the water wisteria or this monstrous hornwort that is all the way up to the top, floating along the top now. And it, like I say, if I hadn't been pruning it a few times already, it would just fill this aquarium. And one of the other advantages of hornwort is it has no roots, and so it gets all of its nutrients from the water itself. So it purifies the water by sucking all the nitrogenous waste produced by the fish and just turning it into more hornwort. And I went to the fish store yesterday asking them if they wanted a bunch of it, hornwort. I mean, I'd be willing to give it to them for free. I don't like the idea of just killing it, just throwing it in the garbage or something. And they will not accept like local amateur breeders, plants or fish. But the manager there said he'd take my hornwort for his own aquariums. So I think I'm going to take a big bucket or just put it all into a bag and bring it to the nice manager of the fish store, because this hornwort is just, I mean, it's definitely an excellent addition to a natural aquarium, because really it's the fish forage in it. It provides shelter for small organisms and possibly someday eventually even baby fish. And also it purifies the water, and it kind of waves around in the water currents and kind of looks monstrous and is, I mean, it just grows so easily too. So let's see. I don't think you're going to see any otosynchus. You saw them last time. There's another zebra loach next to the new female dwarf gourami. The zebra loaches in general. Oh, there's an algae eater. He's right behind the slanty stick, and I can't really get a good view of him. There is that him? Yeah. There's an otocinclus algae eater right on the top of that wooden spike there. And they mainly feed on biofilm and algae. The loaches are just omnivores. They're like detritivores. They feed on the bottom. They're like digging around underneath the leaves and so forth, going through the moss. We've got a pretty good little forest of moss going in there, which is also an excellent habitat for microfauna. That's Java moss there. This Java moss and this hornwort are about the two best habitats. And with that water wisteria coming in honorable mention, third place, I guess. And the snails are just kind of hiding out, I think, because the zebra loaches, like I mentioned, they specialize in feeding on snails, and so they've been like poking at them and just checking out, see how easy they might be to eat. And so the snails are kind of become more introverted, more subdued, if you will. And so that's pretty much it for this. It's become nice and jungly. I remember in the previous video, it wasn't nearly as jungly as this. And I was saying I was going to have to wait for it to get more jungly before I added more fish. And it did indeed. It became jungly as F, you might say. And so it's pretty much maxed out with regard to the number of fish in there. Unless some of them die, I don't think I'm going to be adding any more. I did find one place that does sell male wild-type dwarf gouramis. It's in Arizona, and it's like $70-something just for postage. So that kind of dissuaded me from getting a male dwarf gourami from them. So, I mean, it's possible you could create an artificial wild type by just crossbreeding fancy breeds like this cobalt blue, this flame gourami. I mean, it's all the same species. It's just, they're just fancy breeds now. And I do have at least one female. That one right there looks like a wild type female dwarf gourami. So let's see, might as well mention the Java ferns. I got one Java fern over there, another Java fern kind of in two little clumps over there at the base. And who's that? Oh, that's another, that's the flamey male pseudo wild type dwarf gourami there. I haven't named him yet, but I think I might name him after some ancient Persian king or some such. So I think we're good. You've seen all the species in there. Supposedly, there's two coolie loaches that I put in there when I first got this aquarium. They're one of the first fish to go in there. And I've seen one of them like 2 weeks later, and it's been months since I've seen any, and I'm rather skeptical that they're even still in there. I've got this aquarium is built in. You can see the vents there, like in the back, on the black back surface there. It's small enough that some small creatures like maybe coolie loaches can swim in there and get into the filter. The shrimps that I put in here right before I filmed the last aquarium video, I think they all just went into the filter and just disappeared. Either that or they got eaten by something, because I've seen just not hide or hair of them since the very first day I put them in. But there's so many hiding places in an aquarium like this that it's trying to find anything can be difficult or problematic, except of course for the gouramis and the cherry barbs that just swim around in plain sight. The gouramis especially are so easy to catch. It's just, they'll just swim right into the net. They're very chill, and that's a very good quality of theirs in my opinion, because trying to catch a skittish fish that's trying to get away from you and is hiding can be very frustrating, as I will recount when we move to the next aquarium, which is going to be right now. So we're just going to move over this way. Oh, here's the painting. My woman's mama painted that and gave it to me, I think for my birthday, and we just hung it up on the wall today. It was just sitting on my desk, so it kind of goes with the fish motif. And my woman's very nice mama is visiting us. They're out shopping or something, doing one of those things that women like to do together. So there it is. I don't know what species of fish that is. I'm assuming that it is marine, I'm not exactly sure what order of osteichthyes that fish is, but that's all right. So we're just going to move to my new 10-gallon tank, which is just set up as sort of a culture for invertebrates. So we just move over here. Please excuse the queasy cam effect. And there it is. Let's see, let's try and get it there, right there. So the Buddha statue is just probably about the most dharmic thing you're going to find in this particular video. And this is, there are no fish in here. It's all invertebrates and plants. Like you can see right there is a shrimp, and I think she's actually got eggs under her tail. That's why it's kind of bulging out like that. She's actually, I think that she is reproducing. And it's too bad that piece of broccoli is so far away, because if you look close at that broccoli, you'll see that it is absolutely swarming with nematode worms, and it's got baby snails all over it. Furthermore, besides, I mean, if it was right up to the glass, let's try and do that. It's just so amazing. Of course, my woman doesn't appreciate the coolness of broccoli swarming with worms nearly as much as I do. But it's almost trying to float away. But let's see. You can see right in the glass, see that there's like little forests of nematode worms. Those are the same species that have infiltrated the broccoli. And also lots of baby snails, which may occasionally get eaten by the zebra loaches someday. And also, I've got a fairly good culture of amphipods, but they tend to be nocturnal. Maybe if we shake the hornwort, all this hornwort came from the other aquarium, by the way. This is some of the stuff that got pruned off, and this in turn has been pruned like 3 times now. Let's see if we can shake out any amphipods. No, apparently not. I'm not seeing them. No. Well, you're going to miss out on the amphipods, I guess. But every once in a while, you'll see a little shrimp-like creature swimming around down at the bottom. If you get really close, maybe you could see copepods. We've also got copepods in here. We had some ostracods also, but every once in a while, I was trying to rehabilitate the first Attila, who, he didn't know how to forage very well. So I was putting him in here, which is just chock full of all sorts of like delicacies for fish, all these little copepods and amphipods and worms and so forth. And the female, the wild type female, Kraka, just happened to swim into the net when I was catching the male. So I put her in here too. She ate all the ostracods, apparently. I haven't seen an ostracod since she was in this tank. And then when I got the zebra loaches, the 4 zebra loaches that are in my tank now, there was some concern. I was at work when they were delivered, and they looked very tiny when my woman showed me pictures of them. I wasn't sure if they were so small they could get into the filter of the other aquarium, so I had her turn them loose in this tank until I got home. And man, I decided they were big enough they could go in the main tank, and I tried to catch those 4 zebra loaches, and I had to take everything out of this aquarium. I had to take the ruined Buddha statue out, the hornwort, the sponge filter back there, like the sticks. I had to uproot these plants. I mean, I was cussing too. I was cussing up a storm. I would have made sailors blush on that evening when I'm trying to catch these zebra loaches that were trying very hard not to get caught. And I suppose I could have just taken this. I mean, there you can see the worms a lot better there. See how that broccoli has got like hair growing all over it? All that is nematode worms. They're closely related to earthworms. I think at the pet store or the fish store, they're called blackworms. So, I mean, for some reason, my woman just cannot appreciate such things. But there should be about 8 of these shrimp in here, but they're also very good at hiding. I think you can only really see that one. She stays out in the open because I think she's got eggs under her tail where they keep their eggs, and they like to keep it oxygenated, and so they don't hide in the moss. Like that big ball of moss there, that's like the favorite place for the shrimps to hang out, because it's just a convenient hiding place, and it's a lot of grazing and foraging to be found in there, I am sure. And let's see if we can. I'm not seeing. Oh, there's a little detritus worm. You can see that little white guy right in front of the. He's kind of motoring, and there we go, right in front of that spiky seed pod. That's also a kind of annelid worm. That I think those came from a local stream, but they're completely harmless, and presumably they would serve as food for a hungry fish if the fish was so inclined. Although, as I say, this aquarium doesn't have any fish in it. It's mainly just for invertebrates, and someday, possibly, for a breeding tank, and then I'd raise baby fish in here. And then they'd have all kinds of nice little microbes to feed on and so forth. So let's see. I'm not seeing any amphipods, unfortunately. You're deprived of amphipods. Let's see here. No. There's a lot of copepods in here, but they're so small that it's very difficult to see them on the camera. You can see like the little forest of worms living here. They seem to be reproducing, because I do not recall putting that many in there. And yeah, the copepods are just too small. There's another shrimp right there. I think that might be one of the new ones that I got. Yeah, it's a small one, so it's one of the new ones. I got all red ones. If you try to mix colors, they got all different colors of the same species now, Neocaridina davidi, that they'll just turn into like a mud color, like the original color when they crossbreed, which may be what I'll deliberately try and do with dwarf gouramis, just try to get back to wild type, since real wild type is so hard to get. And so let's see, that's the hornwort that is going to serve as habitat for baby fishes. The amphipods like hanging out in it. Sometimes shrimps do. I think there's a shrimp or a baby snail or something towards the back there, but it's not important, I guess. And we got some kind of leftover micro sword grass that my woman gave to me because she had some left over from planting her own tank, which we're going to see next. So with due respect to the ruined Buddha, I think we're going to move over to the next tank. So we go over here. And this is the tank of my sweetheart. And unfortunately, she planted some grass, this umbrella grass. You can see some of it right there that's still planted. But the cichlids have uprooted some of it, and so we got some grass floating around. That's not supposed to be that way. I hope my woman is not too disappointed in me not tidying up her aquarium, but I didn't want to mess with it. And it's kind of, it looks natural, it's nice. My woman is more artistically inclined than I am, and so she's going for somewhat more of an emphasis on aesthetics and somewhat less of an emphasis on a balanced ecosystem, because these cichlids are so large and so active that I don't think that she could really get to the point in this aquarium of having it completely self-sustaining. Mine is sort of borderline now because I've got so many fish in there that it might be sort of a strain on the system, just not feeding them at all. I mean, you could go for a week without feeding them easily. But with this aquarium, she's got this, the blue ones and the yellow ones, it's both the same species. There's sexual dimorphism. The blue one that's chasing the yellow one is the male. He's the dominant male. I guess the one he's chasing is the beta male, who turns yellow to try and look like a female so that he won't be bothered so much. And then the bright yellow ones are female. And they're, the species is, I can't remember, the species is Solosi, but the genus, it used to be Pseudotropheus solosi, and then it got switched to something like Chundongo salosi or something, and they come from Africa. They come from Lake Malawi, and they have to live in hard water. So this water is slightly alkaline. It's got more more minerals in it than my aquarium or the little invertebrate aquarium. And they mainly feed on algae, which this aquarium just doesn't have much of for whatever reason. It's like she tries to grow algae and it just still doesn't grow very well. And then in addition to the cichlids, you see some little tiger barbs. Like there's tiger barbs right there. There's two different kinds. The one that's got the bars on it, sort of a kind of a beige with black bars and red fins, that's a wild type. So that's a wild type tiger barb. And these are called green tiger barbs that were selectively bred with those dark bars on the wild type. They just kept breeding the ones with the bigger and wider bars until it's pretty much just all one kind of iridescent greenish blackish bar. And both of these species of fish are more aggressive than any of the fish I've got in my aquarium. You can't really mix them because the aggressive ones would be like nipping at the less aggressive ones. And so she's going for a more aggressive tank, I guess. There's also some plecostomus, I think they're called clown plecostomus, that are in this tank somewhere, but they hide a lot. They mostly like are hiding behind the big rock. These cichlids breed in rocks, and so you have to have like caves and so forth in here, and also like a little terracotta hut there for them to breed in, or just for them to feel at home, really. So we're trying to make our fishes feel at home, and I can't really name all the plants. She took some of my hornwort, which was doing me a favor. There's a lot of hornwort waving around in there. It's kind of obscured by the uprooted grass, I guess. But most of her plants, I really don't know what kind they are. They're just plants. And I suppose that's good for these guys. So I'll just kind of pan across over there and show you. That's going to be her 6-gallon betta tank, but it's just now cycling. She just put the water in it yesterday and kind of set up the driftwood, and we got the pump running and everything yesterday. So it's going to be a few days, at least, probably at least a week before she actually puts a fish in there. I've told her she can have my big red dwarf gourami, but I don't know how well the big red dwarf gourami will get along with the Siamese fighting fish. And we got a couple of shrimps right in there. And I guess as sort of a tip of the hat to Dharma, because I usually do more or less Buddhist videos, I will repeat what I was saying in the previous fish video, that it is a very nice, very calming sort of meditation. I don't know if you can hear me. I didn't have the microphone close. I was saying in the previous fish video that it's a very nice meditation to just sit in front of a fish tank and just gaze at the fish. And to some degree, there is the danger. There's the stumbling block of sitting there and you're thinking, well, where's the fourth loach? I mean, I see only 3 of them. Where's the 4th one at? Or just sort of planning what you want to do. Although my tank is pretty much set up now. I'm not going to be adding much of anything to it in the foreseeable future. It's pretty much got the maximum amount of fish in there. And so something's going to have to die before I put any more in, I guess. But so, I mean, that kind of planning is not interfering with the serenity of just gazing at fish silently gliding around in the water. It's really a nice sort of introductory meditation for beginners, and even for someone who meditated hours a day for many years like me. Still, it's just nice to just sit down and just gaze at this little self-contained world with these peaceful little creatures just sort of gliding around through it. So that's like the main bit of Dharma in this video, aside from the little ruined Buddha statue in the 10-gallon tank, and also just reflections on death, and just reflections on just how life perpetuates itself, which in a way it's sort of a white pill for like environmental alarmists. That environmental alarmists are saying humans are just fucking up the world's environment, the climate is changing, and so on and so forth. But what happens is life adapts. Life is very tenacious. Life does not want to die. And so life finds a way to find a new balance. And there are some people like James Lovelock, the founder of the Gaia hypothesis, who he just thinks it's going to change too fast and then life won't be able to keep up. But really, I mean, the climate has changed way faster than we are changing it now. I mean, when the meteor smacked into what is now the Gulf of Mexico and killed off most of the dinosaurs, I mean, that was a sudden, drastic climate change that life survived. I mean, we weren't there yet, but life survived. I mean, if you look at the geological history of the Earth, you'll find that there was one point when the Earth was almost like a snowball. It was almost completely covered with ice. And most of the times when it has been warmer than now, it has been jungly. You know, it's people, I don't know why the scientists are saying that when the world heats up, it's going to get drier and more desert-like. That seems to be one of the big alarms. You know, it's just the world's going to become a desert. It's just going to be like this hot house. We're all going to bake to death or something. But in the past, as a general rule, when things heat up, then evaporation from the oceans increases and you get more rain and more humidity and more clouds and so forth. So I'm not sure why it is that many scientists are thinking that global warming or climate change is going to be such a lethal thing. In fact, there are some people who are saying that if it weren't for climate change, there'd be more people starving right now because the increase in CO2, especially, I mean, CO2 is a fertilizer. Plants require CO2. Some aquarium keepers actually have like a CO2 bubbler in their aquarium just to keep CO2 levels up so that the plants grow better. And so I have read that there's actually more trees, at least more biomass of plants on this earth now than there was 20 years ago, mainly because of the increase in carbon dioxide. But I've completely digressed from aquariums, other than throwing in the token mention that some aquarium keepers will actually add artificial carbon dioxide, like a bubbler, into their aquarium, or like little tablets that release carbon dioxide just so that their plants will grow better. But man, if I did that, the hornwort would just, I mean, it would just be like overflowing the tank and demanding that I feed it and so forth. So I guess that's it. I guess you're now caught up on my now jungly and relatively mature ecosystem aquarium that has apparently a really nice food web going, although I still feed them like every other day just to make sure, because there are a lot of fish in there. And it's kind of a trick trying to get food to sink all the way to the bottom before it gets eaten by the cherry barbs and the gouramis, so that the zebra loaches can actually get some food other than just having to forage for everything. But they seem to be doing fine, at least the three that I see. The fourth one, I'm not exactly sure what the deal is with the fourth one. Oh, and also I should mention, I already kind of mentioned it once, but right below the Buddha statue there, kind of right behind where the broccoli swarming with worms is right now, that's where the last remains of Attila was put. And seriously, I mean, he was covered with worms and snails for a couple days, probably amphipods coming out and feasting on him at night, because amphipods tend to be nocturnal. The shrimps, like this little guy, you know, they would come and nibble on him a little bit, and within like 3 days, all that was left was some scattered little fish bones, and I think even the scattered little fish bones are gone now. So, I mean, if you have an aquarium and it's like a balanced aquarium, then, I mean, you don't even have to take the dead fish out. If the fish die, they can just return their nutrients to the system. You know, like small creatures will feed on the carcass, and then they're gonna poop and pee, which turns into fertilizer for the plants. The plants grow, and it's just this self-perpetuating cycle of life. Just an entire ecosystem. It's not just one organism or one species, but it's just this web of different species that all, in a way, balance each other out. And that's the way the world is on a much larger scale. And that's one reason why I'm not nearly as alarmist as other people who know something about biology and ecology, because life just, it finds its way, finds its balance, and there is like a force involved, sort of like Schopenhauer's will, that it's just, life is just determined to find its way and to perpetuate itself. And even if human beings manage to wipe themselves out, there's still, I mean, even if there was like a thermonuclear holocaust, which let's assume that's not going to happen. But I mean, there'd still be life, and life would then just return. I mean, it might be so bad that it's just like geothermal vents 2 miles deep in the ocean. Well, 1 mile deep in the ocean. 1 or 2 miles deep in the ocean, just these geothermal vents, and then you've just got creatures that live in that nutrient-rich water that are, I mean, they're going to be there for, so long as the oceans are there, presumably. But I keep digressing because I've pretty much shown you the fish, shown you the aquariums, and I assume if there are any significant developments, then I'll probably do a third installment of this. But right now, I guess we're good. And so I'll just conclude by saying, be happy.